Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to the Say Yay to YA panel at the Orlando Book Festival, made possible in part by the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences. So yay for grants. My name is Laura Helseth. I am a blogger at Little Red Riding Hood and a copy editor at Redhead Editing, reader of YA regardless of my age, and moderator for this panel. So welcome. We have some lovely folks with us today. We have Amber Mitchell. You want to wave? Amber?
Hi.
Hey. Amber Mitchell is the author of War of the Wilted and Garden of Thorns. She graduated from the University of South Florida with a BA in creative writing. She likes crazy hairstyles, reading D&D, K-dramas, good puns, and great food. So welcome, Amber.
Thank you.
We also have the lovely Taylor Simmons. Taylor is the author of Collateral Damage and professional manuscript editor with Right My Wrongs Editing. Talk to her about Spider-Man or Tangled. You won't regret it. You might regret it.
See, I didn't know you were going to read the bios out loud. I would have written a better bio, probably.
That's okay. And then hopefully joining us later, we have Namina Forna. Namina is the Los Angeles-based author of the best-selling epic fantasy YA novel The Gilded Ones. Originally from Sierra Leone, Namina loves building fantastical worlds and telling stories with fierce female leads. So fingers crossed that Namina joins us in just a little bit. But now you know who Namina is in case she does. So if I guess we'll start with Taylor, since you're on the top row with me, but I'll bounce back and forth, I promise. I won't make you go first every time. Do you want to give us a brief summary of your latest release and just kind of tell us about it?
Yeah, sure. So my release is my debut. It's called Collateral Damage, and it is about a background extra in a world that is not Marvel, because Marvel is copyright, but it is about a girl who has no powers, who lives in a city that might remind you of the Avengers New York, that is full of superheroes, and her goal is to not die under falling debris, as one does, and her role as background extra kind of gets screwed up when she accidentally finds one of the superheroes dead and is roped into solving his murder and preventing his team from meeting the same fate.
That sounds super fun and right up my alley. I'm just going to make a note real quick. Give me a second. Amber?
My book is a young adult fantasy series. It's about a 16-year-old girl named Rose, who is in a burlesque troupe, not by choice, by force, called The Garden. And she ends up meeting someone that can help her get out. And it's all about her trying to free her fellow sisters and take revenge on The Garden.
That also sounds delightful. I have found 2 new books. Thanks. So do you think that your teenage self would have liked the book that you've written? And if not, what do you think teenage you would have liked that is out now? Amber, you want to go first?
Sure. I would like to think that teenage me would like this book. I've always really been into fantasy. When I was growing up, it was kind of like, I call it the Renaissance, like the golden age. Like it was like the beginning, because I would walk into the young adult section and there would not be a lot, just a couple shelves. And then when I got into college, I walked back into the young adult section after being in fantasy forever, and it was like filled. Coincidentally, it was right around the time Twilight came out and Hunger Games was huge. So I think the books that are coming out now, I would have loved. I'm currently reading These Violet Delights, which I was reading before I started, and it's super good so far.
That's excellent. Taylor?
Yeah, I would say yes, because I got the idea for this while I was still a teenager. I went and saw Man of Steel when I was in high school, and it was terrible. And the whole time I was watching it, I just the end was like the fight at the end was like half an hour long. They're destroying the entire city, just smashing through buildings for no reason. The big CGI battle that superhero movies always do. And I'm just sitting there and I was bored and I didn't like it. And I started thinking about how annoying it would be to live in that city while this was going on. And I started like mentally narrating for like little side characters that I saw on the screen, like, oh, that person over there, they probably just bought that car and now it's being thrown through a window. And then I was like, that would be a fun book. And I started thinking about it. And I didn't finish it, obviously, when I was in high school because I was not a good writer. I didn't know what I was doing, but I kept thinking about it for years. And then when I graduated college, I was like, I'm gonna write that, I think. And I did it. And I was a huge fan of, like, speaking of books that I loved in high school, The Princess Diaries was my favorite. And I read it like a million times. I read it over and over and over again. And so I really liked that voice, that like, Mia Thermopolis, why do these things keep happening to me kind of deal. And so I took that and that became the kind of character, the major characteristic of Meg, who's my protagonist. So yes, teenage me would have liked this book.
That's awesome. I love hearing when specific things inspire books, because sometimes it's kind of like a vague, oh, I don't know, I just kind of kept thinking about this one character, but you've got like the specific movie that you started like, no, yeah, this is terrible.
The one good thing that came out of Man of Steel.
So what do you think it is about the young adult books that make it such a draw to people of all ages? I mean, from kids that are probably 10 and 11 that should still be reading middle grade to, you know, adults in their 80s and 90s. What's the draw?
I mean, I always answer this question like I'm trying to convince other people to read YA, but the people that are watching this panel already love YA, so you already know. I think that everything in YA is more heightened. I think it's the most elevated genre in terms of the way that the characters feel their emotions so rawly and so intensely, and the stakes feel high, whether it's contemporary or fantasy. They just feel like the end of the world, and I love that sense of escapism. I don't think it's replicated in the same manner anywhere else.
And I think it's a shared experience we all have too. We've all gone through those things. We've all, like, I love the young adult genre because it's all about mostly firsts. We've all had like our first kiss, our first fight with our friend. Sometimes the stakes are more elevated, but at the heart of it, it's really about finding out who you are. And that central idea, I think, is something that everybody relates to because we're all looking to find out who we are and how we fit in the world. And I think that the young adult genre really, really hits on that. And so I think that's why so many people find it relatable as well.
Yeah, I know as a teen, I definitely felt things more intensely than I do now that I'm a little more jaded. I like to think that I was jaded as a teen, but I wasn't. So I think reading young adult kind of reminds me of how, I don't know, the stakes were so much higher for things. Like, you know, if this guy didn't like me back, then that was the end of the world. Or if I didn't finish this homework assignment, it was the end of the world. Like, obviously, neither of those are literal, but I think that's why YA fantasy, where it could be the literal end of the world, just draws me in as a reader.
Right. There's so much tension there.
Right.
And you don't have to fabricate it. It's just, we've all felt it. It's all there.
It just is. Yeah.
Something so wonderful about that, like you said, that feeling of discovery. I think that there's that's constant in all of them. The feeling that like you can make mistakes, you can figure out who you are. That's what the whole point is. I feel like in especially like adult books, which I guess is what I'm supposed to be reading because I'm like an adult now. Usually the characters I feel like are a little more well established in who they are and what they want. And I like that the conflict in YA is just as much about the internal conflict of figuring out who you are as it is about the external conflict. That might be an overgeneralization to adult. I apologize to the adult category. There are a lot of other books that are also about figuring out who you are as well. But
I feel like adult is a lot about like figuring out your place in the world though. And like young adult is figuring out, because you have to figure out who you are before you can figure out where you fit.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of what adult explores, but young adult explores like that central question of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. That's a really good summation of the differences between the two categories. Because that's totally, yeah. I'm actually gonna write that down. I do have a notebook right here. I literally am writing things down. So kind of a little more serious of a question, I guess. How much, if at all, do you think you as an author of YA have to censor the YA books for the teen audience that you're technically writing for? And I mean, censor language, sex, violence, etc., compared to adult books.
You're first, Amber.
Okay. I think for me anyway, that it's important to always consider and remember the audience that I'm writing for, the target audience, teens. I mean, as a teen, I was cursing and, doing all those things you're not supposed to do. And I think that it's important to represent that to an extent, because it's real life. And if teens don't see things that are happening in real life and what they're doing, then it doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel real. And it also doesn't help them. But at the same time, there's a difference between representing real life and then glamorizing things. And, I've been trying, like when I write, I always try to look at the different sides and see, what, I guess, kind of the line between the two. So I do censor it a little bit, but I also try and be authentic to like the real experience, as real as fantasy can be. But yeah, so.
I have not run into the problem of having to censor myself for sexual activity because I am A-spec and all of my books are A-spec. So there is absolutely no romance or attraction or anything in Collateral Damage. And the book that I just finished is a platonic soulmates story. So I have nothing to contribute on that front. But in terms of violence, I think, Amber, you're reading These Violent Delights. I think we can probably agree that the rules in terms of what is allowed with violence and YA are quite
large. Yes.
I think with violence, as far as I know, I don't think there are too many rules or too many things you have to worry about censoring. I've read quite a extremely violent YA books, and I think that the market probably appreciates that because, I mean, teenagers are not babies. They're not kids. Like everyone can handle it. It's I haven't run into too many problems that are.
I guess if there's a reason behind it,
Yeah, like gratuitous stuff. I don't think.
Right.
I think. Yeah, like gratuitous stuff, and I think depending on what kind of violence it is, there are different things that you probably wouldn't want to address. But in terms of like battle, I'm thinking like battles or monsters or even like gore. I think you can get away with a lot.
You totally can.
But yeah.
The book that you just finished, does it have a title yet? Taylor?
The book that I finished is called An Infinite Pull. I did not have an agent for my last book, so I'm currently trying to find an agent. with this one, because I loved my experience going through Parliament House, but I think I just would love to have an agent for book purposes.
Yes.
However, I'm currently going through an identity crisis because I talked to a friend yesterday who had read it and said, "Are you sure this is an upper middle grade?" And now I'm like, is it upper middle grade? So it might be upper middle grade, not YA. We're going through some things. I'm rereading it, and I think she might have a point. So, but yeah, it's Treasure Planet with mermaids.
That sounds excellent.
Thanks.
Yeah. I'm excited for it.
Thank you.
So do you have any advice for a teenager wanting to start writing? Or an adult wanting to start writing YA?
Read YA. I mean, that's the first one, is like read in the genre that you want to publish in, so that you know what the market is like and you know what the style is like. If you're reading books that came out, 20th century or classics or anything before the YA genre was technically like invented, it's probably not very representative of what YA actually looks like right now. So it's important to read recent books. It's important to read diversely and widely, and just educate yourself and figure out like what the audience is like and what the market is like. But in terms of like practicing writing, especially if you're like a teenager, it sounds reductive to just say just go for it, but that's the only way that you can do it is to practice. And I would even say, if it sounds fun to you, write some fan fiction. Like, find properties that you like and things that you're passionate about, because that's how you figure out which tropes you like. That's how you figure out which archetypes appeal to you. It's fun. You don't have to show it to anybody, or you can post it online anonymously and get compliments. Just like getting your work out there and just practicing and doing it with things that you're passionate about can really invigorate that passion, and then it'll translate into writing original work.
Absolutely, I agree. I would also say to set realistic goals. It's not very exciting, but I see so many people, and I fell into this too, especially when I was younger, where it's like, okay, this is the year I'm going to get an agent, and this is the year I'm going to get published and whatever. But it's more important to set goals that you are in charge of, instead of goals that rely on luck and chance and a little bit of pixie dust, because you're going to get really discouraged. So definitely set realistic goals. If your realistic goal is, I'm going to write 500 words a day or 5 days a week, set something that you can do, set something that you can accomplish, because that feeling of accomplishment is what is going to keep you going. So I think that's a really, really big thing too.
Yeah, for sure.
For like, here's an actual thing to do. And I was like, write fan fiction.
I mean, that's really good too. Like, that's how you learn. And then like, to keep going, I would say to set the goals.
What is your goal? How do you typically?
I try to write 500 words at least 5 days a week, because 500 is really easy for me to reach. So I know that I can always hit it, and then feel like the satisfaction of like, okay, I've done this. I can get 500 more, and that's easy. So that's usually my goal.
Yeah. Do you have like a job outside of writing then?
I am a full-time mother right now, toddler, 2-year-old. So
that's time consuming. Yeah. And I think that's the hard thing too, is that when you have anything else big that's going on in your life, you can feel like uninspired to write, or you can feel like you're falling behind other people where writing is their full-time job, and it can get hard, like, finding yourself.
And I mean, it's not an easy career to get into anyway, because you're facing so much rejection all the time. You're constantly critical of yourself. Other people are critical of you. So I think if you can find little joys in it, that's what, at least for me, that's what keeps me motivated, is, reaching my goals and accomplishing things and setting stuff that I am in charge of, not necessarily publishing as a whole, because that moves very, very slow.
Right. Yeah. Publish it. I don't think a lot of people outside of publishing realize how long things take.
And then it's like very slow, like months in between, and then you get something back and it's like 2 weeks and they need this back. So like it's long periods and then crazy periods of just like typing forever.
A lot of hurry up and wait.
Like
And then just hurry up.
I'm in law school right now, and even if I got an agent tomorrow, I would be out of law school before my next book could even possibly come out.
Yeah, they're already accepting for like 2022. 2022.
It's so far away. I can't even plan for what I'm going to do this summer.
That's a made-up number. That doesn't exist.
So and if you can't think of something off the top of your head, that's okay. If someone was like, man, I think I'm going to try reading some YA, what are some like good introduction books for them that you would suggest?
Who answered first last time?
You can go in whatever order. If you've got an answer, go for it.
Okay, I don't know what good introductory to YA books look like, because there's a lot that are like really popular that I really like. So I'm going to answer this question as like, what are the best YA books that you read recently that you've been recommending to people? So I just read Wings of Ebony by J.L. and it was amazing. It was everything that I loved about YA when I was like first getting into it, kind of combined and then heightened and made even better, because it has magical elements, it has dystopian elements, it has like identity finding elements, it has found family elements, like and it's just so well written and beautiful, and I really, really loved it. So I've been recommending that one to people. Into the Heartless Wood is like one of my all-time favorite books. It just came out in January, but I got an arc of it last year and I haven't shut up about it since then. And that one is like that one's this beautiful soft YA fantasy that just makes me squeal. And so that's one of my favorites. And then did we say YA in general, or did I just start thinking about YA fantasy and I just started thinking about YA fantasy?
In general, I read a lot of YA fantasy and sci-fi too. So
okay, YA fantasy is my favorite, but I got really into YA contemporary last year, and I didn't like contemporary all that much growing up. And last year I found so many that I just fell in love with. Felix Ever After is like one of the best books I've ever read. I love that one. I love The Best Laid Plans. I love Today, Tonight, Tomorrow, which just came out. What do I have?
Oh my gosh, I do the same thing when people ask me for recommendations. I'm like, hold on, give me a second.
Cemetery Boys. What am I doing? Oh my god, like one of the best books I've ever read. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay.
I'm gonna be like super boring because I haven't had a whole lot of time to read lately. I don't know. I'll read anything that Libba Bray puts out. The Diviners is up next for me. And then I've kind of been going through some of my older stuff. So like I write a lot of young adult fantasy, so I don't end up reading a lot of it because I don't want to take inspiration from it too much. So I have like so many older books here. Like I literally just read Throne of Glass. Took me forever, but I have so many like older things on my shelf right now that I've been trying to go through very, very, very slowly at the end of the day. But there are so many new things out that I want to get to. I haven't had the time at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have kids, but I can imagine having a toddler would take up all of my brain power.
I mean, it's endlessly exhausting, and at the end of the day, it's either like accomplish my writing goal or read or do a little bit of both, which I've been trying to do now because I miss it. Like, you know, you're saying with writing, I've heard this a lot, but it's a well and you have to fill it up. And so I'm getting to the point now where like it is super dry and I really need to start reading.
Audiobooks?
I know. And that's how I did Throne of Glass, is to and from places in the car. And that's what I'm going to start doing more and more because that's how it's going to have to be. I like the feeling of a book, though.
Me too.
Yeah.
I am. I always was like, no ebooks. I hate them. And then I realized I was spending literally all the money I own on books.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered that my library does ebook borrowing, and my life has been changed. I have saved probably $1,000 in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I read like, I don't even know how many books. So many. And it's so much faster. And I haven't been spending money. So my life has been changed.
Yeah, ebooks are great, especially like when you're going somewhere on vacation.
Yeah. You just take your reader and you don't have to bring a box.
One bag for books.
I was definitely that kid that when we went on vacation, like half of my suitcase was books.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yes.
So yeah.
And then I always buy more wherever we went. I'd be like, oh, I'm souvenirs.
Every like family trip I can remember, it's not like the things we did. I'm like, oh yeah, I read that book.
Yeah.
I remember them by books.
That is delightful. I found my people. So when you decided, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write a book, and I know it didn't happen exactly like that. Like that's not necessarily how things work. But why did you decide to write in the young adult genre versus middle grade or adult? Like what drew you to that?
Well, when I decided I was going to write a book, I was a teenager. I was, again, going through the section, and it was really sad. And I was like, I want to write something that I want to read. And so I did originally start with an adult book, but it was more like a new adult book with characters like closer to college age. And, you know, then when I got back into a bookstore and young adult was so big, I was like, no, this is exactly what I want to write. And again, it goes back to that question of, you know, wanting to answer who I am. And like a lot of my life happened when I was a teenager. Like I'm married to my high school sweetheart. I'm still best friends with my best friend from high school and all through life. So like, I believe that true connections can be made when you're a teenager, and like the feelings we feel, while they are exaggerated, they're very real. And that's what drew me to the genre. And that's what makes me want to write the genre, because I believe that all of the things that teenagers think that can happen to them can happen to them. And I like to represent that.
My answer is not going to be as good as yours, because mine was on a technicality. Mine is that Spider-Man is my favorite superhero. I knew I was going to have a Spider-Man-esque character in my book who was in high school, and there is a major plot point in which the main character, who has gotten her GED because she doesn't like being out in public any longer than she needs to be, has to pretend to be a high school student in order to figure out his identity. So she's the same age, so that was where, but also I came up with the idea when I was in high school, so I wasn't thinking any older than that age. Those ages didn't exist. Right. So, and YA has always been my favorite genre anyway, but like I said before, I'm having an identity crisis currently because this other book that I wrote, the main characters were 16, and my friend recently pointed out that because it's a platonic soulmate story, it's heavily inspired by Castle in the Sky. The main character has a lot of like family issues and feels like he doesn't belong, and has an incredibly overpowering fear of space itself. She was like, this book is very whimsical. It's a space fantasy. It's literally got space mermaids. You can age this down into an upper middle grade. And now I'm having an identity crisis because I think she's right. So maybe I don't write YA anymore. Who knows? Nothing's real.
I mean, that's okay too. You can write anything.
Yeah. You can write both. I mean, I think there's a lot of crossover between middle grade and YA. Like it kind of depends on what you want the focus to be on. Yeah. At least in my brain, like YA is kind of like finding, like you said earlier, finding yourself, figuring out who you are. Middle grade is a little bit of that, but with less serious consequences.
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of. I mean, obviously the consequences can be serious in middle grade as well, but it's just, I don't know.
I feel like the younger you are, though, like the more sure of yourself you are. Like when I was 10, I was the most me I've ever been until like I was 30. Cause like I knew everything. I knew who I was and like I knew my place. And then you become a teenager and you're like, wait, nothing is right. Everything I thought is wrong. And then you become like older again and you're like, no, I was right when I was 10.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point, actually.
Yeah, definitely at 10 years old, I knew everything, and you know, everybody was stupid. Like, why? This is so obvious. And then I was incorrect. But yeah, now that I'm in my upper 30s, I'm like, I don't care what other people think of me. Yeah, like whatever, it's fine. So at this point, I'm gonna say the audience can start asking questions. Feel free to put them in the chat, and we will get to as many as we can. But until then, I will just keep rolling right along. So you guys have both mentioned some books that you've read recently, but what are you currently reading? Like, is there something that you're in the middle of?
I am currently in the middle of When the Moon Was Ours by Anne Marie McLemore, I believe the author's name is, and it's incredible. It is one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. The prose, like, is ending me. I would literally sacrifice my soul to be able to write this beautifully, because it's poetry, and I'm obsessed with it. And I'm also currently reading Written in Starlight, which is the sequel to Woven in Moonlight by Isabel Ibanez, which was a book that I loved last year, and I'm very excited to read the sequel. I just started it, and it's great.
Amber, what are you currently reading, if you are?
Yeah, I'm very boring. I showed it earlier, but this is my current read. I'm only a couple chapters in. I've been trying to read like chapter a night when I can. It's really, really great so far. My friend got it for me for Christmas, and she got herself a copy. So we've been texting back and forth as we read along, which has been fun.
That is always fun. I love reading books with other people.
Yeah. It's the
then
best.
You have someone to like scream at.
Yes.
And they know what you're screaming about.
The best experience I've ever had, because I'm too fast of a reader, so sometimes it can be difficult reading with other people because I will get to the part before they do, and then I have to keep my mouth shut. But my best friend and I read the Cruel Prince series together a couple years ago, and I read them first, let him borrow them, and then he gave it back with Post-it notes in the margins with all of it.
That's so cute.
That is awesome. That is really fun. Now I'm gonna make my sister do that. Don't tell her.
Secret.
Shh. She'll never see this. It's fine. So what are you currently working on? I know you can't necessarily give, because publishing, necessarily give us a bunch of details, but tell us a little bit about the project you're currently writing.
Okay. The third book, the final book in the Garden of Thorns trilogy, is coming out, I believe, in August is the current date, but that could be pushed back because COVID's been crazy from Entangled. So I have been working on that. We're almost done with it. And then on the side, because it's always on the side, I've been working on a young adult Peter Pan-esque horror retelling, which has been very different from what I usually write, but it's super fun, and it's kind of got my heart right now. There's like historical, which I haven't done before, but I've gotten really into lately. So yeah, I've got that all plotted out, and I've been slowly trekking away on that.
I love that.
Thank you.
I don't have any publishing roles because I'm currently unagented. Ha 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 ha. So I am I am querying the Space Mermaids book that I talked about. And while I'm doing that, I fell completely in love with one of the side characters from that book, who is a couple years older than the main character, who is a like sarcastic knife girl kind of character.
Mm-hmm.
And she just took over. And so I had an idea for a spin-off featuring her in a sapphic enemies to lovers story with a girl with the power who was born cursed with the power to turn anyone she touches to stone, who was sent to assassinate the captain. And I'm like 40,000 words into it and having the best time of my life. The entire thing feels like fan fiction to me. And there's no pressure because I have no deadline because I am querying the first book. Mm-hmm. So I kind of feel like I'm like Trojan horsing this story in with the original one, because the first one's like this soft, pretty platonic soulmates book. Oh, you like this? Okay, now take my enemies to lovers along with it. Here you go. We'll see what happens, but I'm having a great time.
That's awesome.
I mean, that's how it is in most stages of publishing too, because once you get the agent, then you're out on submission, and it's just a whole bunch more waiting, except you have less control because your agent's doing it. So you're just like, any news today? No? Okay.
No. Okay, good.
It's the same thing as the inbox. You're just waiting for your agent to inbox you.
A couple weeks ago, I was like, man, I can't wait to stop frantically checking my inbox. Differently frantically check my inbox.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It never stops.
Never stops.
Never stops.
They said there were questions.
Yeah, it looks like we have a couple of questions from the audience. All right. So do you think that the lack of romance or sex might make someone want to categorize a book as middle grade rather than young adult or adult? Do people always expect romantic subplots from YA? That's an excellent question, Eli.
Yes, they do, and it sucks. That was one of the things that we talked about when we were talking about was that one of the problems with marketing this book might be that there is no romance and that there's no sex, because it's difficult to market that, because it feels like such an integral part of YA that there's always some kind of romantic subplot. And I can't think of very many books that I've read from the YA market that don't at least have some kind of romantic subplot somewhere. And it's just not something that's part of my thought process or personality. It's not something that I think about, and it's not something that I naturally like gravitate toward in my books. And so for me, I feel like it shouldn't make a difference, because the story is the one that I'm querying. It's platonic soulmates, and so even though there's no kissing and there's no attraction, it's still like two people who care about each other more than anything else in the world. But yeah, that's very common for people to get comments that are like, well, I don't know how to market this because there isn't any romance. And it's garbage. Friendship's important.
It's super important. And I mean, particularly representing friendship between like girls and guys is really important. It doesn't have to be romantic in order to do it. But I just think that, it's harder.
I would say that even if it's not like a romantic kind of love, there's still a love there. Like it's just a different kind, you know, and I think that needs to be represented more.
But Laura, there's no kiss. How love when no kissing?
Listen, okay. When I was working with my publisher for the first book, my characters were not allowed to kiss. Every time I was like, and they kiss, they're like, nope, they don't. Something happens. And I'm like, okay.
Was it just like for the tension of it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's another one.
Ooh.
What are your favorite and least favorite tropes in YA? And jumping off that question, for the least favorite, is there anything you think should be banned from being written ever again? Something so bad you want it dead and buried? All right, let's start with favorite tropes. That's usually easier.
It is easier. God, I like tropes. Okay, I'm gonna be. I don't think I have. I'm gonna try and think of a least favorite one. But tropes are great because they give you an idea that you can then reinvent. So I really like them. guilty pleasure trope is for sure the love triangle. I don't think I'd ever write one, but it's fun to read about them sometimes. I am always a sucker for, oops, we got into a room and there's only one bed. So I can't help it. I like fake relationships. I think those are super, super fun. So yeah, I think those probably are my favorites.
I'm for someone who just spent a lot of time talking about how they don't really like write romance. I love reading it. I just don't like think about it when I'm writing it. But I'm pretty easy to please when it comes to tropes. I like all of the ones that you just said. I love well-developed slow burn enemies to lovers. I love it when they have like a legitimate reason for hating each other, or if they're rivals. In Today, Tonight, Tomorrow, it was an academic rivals to lovers thing, and it was like one of the best executed versions of that I've ever seen. I was screaming by like 2 chapters in, because you hear about this boy for like a whole chapter and how the girl, like, they've been rivals forever and she can't stand him and he's like always in her way, and he like sends her these annoying texts every morning, and she hates him so much. And then as soon as you see him on the page, you're like, oh my God, he thinks they've been flirting for 4 years. He does not think that he thinks they are flirting. And it was wonderful. So I love that. And then the only one that I don't like that comes to mind in terms of tropes is the inverse of that, which is the enemies to lovers. That is, I can't stand him or them or her, but they're so hot, and I'm like, ugh. And then there isn't really any development from that. It's just like, oh, I can't resist, because I said, a spec, I can't really, and I don't feel it. And if there isn't any emotional connection, it's like, I know. Okay, that's all.
I hate, and I know that at all.
I've thought of one that I hate, and I don't even know if it's a trope, but I hate when the misunderstanding is just miscommunication too.
Oh yeah.
Like if it can be solved by them talking, I'm like, no, I'll throw the book.
Yeah. Agree.
That's the one I hate. That's my least favorite.
100% agree.
Yeah.
It can go die in a fire.
Yes, please talk to each other. Even if you talk to each other badly, please talk to each other.
Right.
Romantic misunderstanding is just lack of communication. It like derails the whole thing for me.
Yes, like give me a legitimate reason at least, besides like they don't talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's more questions. Oh, there we go. Do you think Ace is becoming more accepted in YA now with We Need Diverse Books?
I think so, because there's been lots of books that have come out recently that feature Ace main characters or Ace storylines, which is great. I still think that there's this problem, which is that even within the queer community, Ace spec isn't always seen as like queer enough, which is very annoying. There's always this kind of imposter syndrome that's like, well, you know, your identity isn't really exactly like the kind of queer that we're trying to push. Like, what is Ace even? Like, congratulations, you don't experience sexual attraction. Lots of people don't do that. You're not different. And so that can be kind of challenging as well, especially if you have any kind of intersection, or you know, just because you're asexual doesn't mean that you're not biromantic or queer in a different way. And there are lots of different combinations, and so that can be difficult as well. But I'm hopeful that we're getting to a place where it's more accepted.
Me too. Those stories need to be told.
Yeah, 100%. And I love reading. I don't know why we had to, I don't know why diverse books weren't a thing as much as they are getting to be now, because I love reading about perspectives that are different from mine. I love it so much. Like, I don't get it. I think
that's why we read.
Right.
That's why I write.
I don't generally read contemporary because I don't want to read about something that could actually happen. Give me something that I can't experience.
Yeah, it's
Flying in
like
a spaceship.
we can read books about dragons and vampires, but ace people
Right.
don't exist.
All right. Sorry, there was another question that popped up, and then we kind of, there we go. What is your writing process? Do you have a writing process?
I'm currently actually two. I'm currently in law school. I have no time to write. So currently my writing process is I have a giant things to do list, and every time I cross one off, I write 100 words because it's like 3 sentences. And then suddenly by the end of the day, I've written like 1,000 and it's magical. So that's working really well for me. But my writing process in terms of outlining is I use Pinterest boards and Spotify playlists, which is like my entire personality gimmick. I outline the entire book using Pinterest boards. So I'll have like a storyboard for each scene and one for each character and one for each costume design. And I piece together the book that way, and it's very visual and weird, and I love it very much.
Amber?
I do Pinterest board a little bit, not to that extent. I'll do it for like certain scenes and stuff when I'm really excited about them and I can't write them yet, because I use scenes that I'm excited about to motivate myself to write through the ones that I'm less excited about. I am a strict plotter. I write chapter outlines. I write query, synopsis, and then chapter outline. I've just trained myself to do that now because it's way harder to go reverse for me. I like to start with like a small nugget, get bigger, and then do the major thing. And then as far as writing, I try to write 500 words five times a week. And if I can do more, that's great. I'm very specific on like details. So like I see scenes of like with detail, and so I'll write all that down, and then I'll get to it and I'll be like, yes, I get to write this one. So that's mostly my process.
I think we have time for maybe one more question. If there's other audience questions.
I think Laura.
Yeah, I think we're good. No.
Yeah.
Laura froze.
Surprising thing you learned about yourself.
Questions? Maybe. Oh. What? Okay. What happened? I don't know what happened. Can we put the question back up there? I didn't get all of it. There we go. What's the most surprising thing you learned about yourself while writing your book?
It's a good question. What did I learn about myself?
Or something that surprised you in the book. We'll add that to it.
That one's hard.
I don't know.
So I make each character, you know, they all have to go through something, even if they're minor characters. They all have subplots. So I think maybe I don't necessarily learn things about myself, but I use writing as a way to explore things. So even if it's a situation I've never been in, I'm able to learn maybe how I would deal with it, or more importantly, how somebody else would deal with it in a completely different way than me. And I think that helps broaden my mind to learn and know about other people's experiences. I want to know about them. I want to put myself in their shoes. So I think writing has really helped stretch that for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, okay, I think I put parts of myself, especially my weaknesses, into most of the characters that I write. And watching them kind of balloon out into the worst possible versions of what I could become if I let that consume me is very interesting to me. The book that I'm working on right now, the Knife Girl one, her biggest thing is that she is extremely insecure and competitive. And obviously being part of this industry, and as someone who worked in Walt Disney World Entertainment for 7 years and who is now in law school, competition is not something that I'm new to, but I've really tried to contain it and not turn it into something toxic. And so it's been very interesting to explore what toxic competitiveness would look like, and I guess what I should avoid being, but it's an interesting way to approach that. I hope that answered the question. That was a really good question.
Yeah. I think that was an excellent answer.
Too.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that gets us to time. I want to thank both Taylor and Amber. You guys have been absolutely lovely to chat with.
Yay!
I've had a lovely time. I use the word lovely a lot, apparently. That's my thing now. So for everyone watching, check out the website for the rest of the panels today, ocls.info/obf. The panel that starts at noon is called Crafting the Tension. So if you are interested in writing, it will be an excellent panel for you to watch and maybe learn some info. So that's it for us. Thank you, everyone. Thanks again, Amber and Taylor. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, and I hope everyone had a good time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to be the first to find out when we have new fun and informative videos for you. Orange County Library System is your place to learn, grow, connect.